This is B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro and Moxie Insights.
I'm James Henderson, Editorial Director at Moxie Insights. In this episode, I'm joined by Hope McGarry, offering an unfiltered take on career highs and career lows.
I think very early on in my career, I really struggled with feeling a little bit like an imposter. Ultimately, no one can care more about your career than you. I think that managing professional and personal responsibilities is really, really challenging for women in the industry. This industry runs very, very quickly, particularly being in distribution. It's exceptionally fast paced. I think balance is a myth. I shudder and I cringe when people talk about it.
Hope tackles never discussed industry issues, both as a mother and as a leader, whether that's imposter syndrome, gender bias, or the myth of balance. Enjoy this episode.
Hope, very easy, well, not easy, but a very direct question to start with. What is your biggest fear in business?
It is a bit of a tough question, James. I really had to think about this one a lot. I think my biggest fear is having been in the industry for a while, and I really grew up in the industry. I think one of the biggest fears that I have is becoming complacent. I really fear that having been in the industry for such a long time, that I can potentially or could potentially really lose my curiosity and not be open to change. And I think in this industry, at the pace of change that we experience, I think you really have to be open to change. And I think if you're not, I think that you can really miss out on opportunities and competitive differentiators. So I never ever want to be that person in the meeting that says, but that's not the way we've always done it. That's not the way we do it here. That won't work. And I think my biggest fear is really not being open to that change and becoming complacent, because I have been in the industry for quite some time. And I think that no matter how much experience that you have, I think staying curious and really being open to change, but also not just being open to change, being a driver of change is what keeps us relevant to our customers, our peers, and also our teams. So one of the things I really try to challenge myself to do is not get too caught up in the day-to-day, to really push myself outside of kind of what is comfortable. This is a really good example of that. I'm not comfortable doing this podcast today. And to really keep, challenging myself to look beyond the now. And so I think for me, my biggest fear is leaning and resting on my experience and not being open to the change. So I think that would be my biggest fear.
And Hope, I imagine there's a balancing act there, because you're right, but also at the same time, and we'll get into your career, you've been very successful in what you've done and you've got the experience. Again, we can go through that, but so how do you get that balance? Because sometimes your experience and what you've done in the past actually is successful, and there's a lot of IP that you actually have. So do you have to get that balance between being curious, open to change, but also trusting your instincts and actually saying, well, actually, I have experience in this and this is what I bring to the table? Is that a balance?
It is a balance. It's absolutely a balance. There are so many talented people around me each and every day in the partner space, in the vendor space, and within Ingram Micro itself. And listening to diverse perspectives, listening to people who have had a whole range of experiences is critical. I don't have all of the answers. I would never profess to have all of the answers. And I think that there is so much value and benefit in making sure that I strike that balance really well, and that I'm open to hearing from different perspectives on what may or may not work. And so I think it's always really important to know and to check yourself as a leader, and to remind yourself that no matter how much experience and tenure that you have, you actually don't have all of the answers.
So if I take that fear and that need to be curious and open to new ways of doing things, if I put it in the context of your own career and your own journey, that roller coaster ride that everyone goes through as an exec,
Mm-hmm.
I'll get to the highs, but maybe talk me through the lows in the career that you've had. I mean, again, it's a roller coaster for everyone, but there must be things that stand out and there must be challenges that you've had along the way.
I love this industry. This industry has given me a lot. It's given me an amazing life. I'm really fortunate to be able to have seen many parts of the world, to meet so many amazing people, and to really form lifelong friendships. I've been to weddings, I've seen births of babies, and have had friendships that have spanned 20 years in this industry. So I would start off by saying that I think the thing I feel most about this industry is just a sense of gratitude for what it's given me and how it's shaped me into the person that I am today, and also for the friendships and the relationships that I've been able to forge. I think absolutely there's been lots of highs and lots of lows, irrespective of what I'm grateful for. And I think there's been highs where I've felt like I was truly making an impact, and I think for me that's critically important to me as a human and as a person. I really want to do work that makes an impact, either an impact on another person, or a financial impact, or drives a business forward, or successfully launches an initiative or a program, whatever that looks like. I think for me, it's just critically important that I feel like I'm making an impact. So, I really, take my leadership position very seriously, and I really try to lead from the front, and build really successful and dynamic teams. Whether it's building new strategies, whether it's being part of the launch of Xvantage at Ingram Micro, or receiving recognition, like the recent Career Achievement Award that I received.
Yeah.
Those moments are all highlights for me and remind me why I'm still in the industry, and motivate and inspire me to continually push myself every day to be better. But obviously, on the flip side, there are lows, and those lows have been just as crucial, I think, to my journey as the highs. I think very early on in my career, I really struggled with feeling a little bit like an imposter. I really had to come and forge my career on my own. I didn't grow up in Sydney. I didn't attend a private school in Sydney. I didn't have connections and relationships. And I really knew nothing about the IT industry. And I think I really had to overcome some of that imposter syndrome that I felt, and use some of that fear and some of that sense of not being good enough as fuel. There were many times where I felt like I was overlooked. There were times where I didn't feel as though people were seeing my potential, irrespective of the fact that I was putting in effort and delivering really, really strong results. And I had to learn that sometimes the work doesn't speak for itself, and that you have to advocate for yourself, and you have to really be purposeful about your career and what you want, and you have to find people that will advocate and support you when you're not in the room, when opportunities come about. And so I think, as a woman in a sales leadership role, I've really had to grapple with the reality that sometimes, despite your achievements, you still have to continually prove your worth. And that pressure can be really, really tough. And there are moments where it feels like a really heavy weight to carry. And I also feel sometimes I have to run as fast as I can, or faster than others, to continually show that I'm worthy of the roles that I've got, or the role that I'm in, because I'm not in a stereotypical role in the industry. There aren't a lot of other women in the industry today that are leading a large sales organization, and are responsible for the scope and scale of what I'm responsible for. So I think, that's been something I've had to navigate and work through as I've matured and grown in my career.
And hope a couple of things to unpack there, and I'll get into the women in tech dimension as well, which I know you're very passionate about, and obviously a very important subject. But you raised a really good point there around your own background, just outside of Sydney, not privately educated. I mean, actually, nowadays that is seen as an advantage if you're coming into the industry now, in a way, because you're thinking differently. But I imagine 20 years ago that wasn't the case. Did
Yeah.
you always have to grapple with yourself, or talk yourself into things? How did you manage that imposter syndrome, as you put it?
I think for me, I was really fortunate in that I found some really great mentors and people that really believed in me when I probably didn't believe in myself. And I think for me, that has been such a critical part of my career. I was very fortunate back in my time at Compaq. I was put on a early career hire women's mentorship program, which, when you think back as to how long ago that was, that was quite cutting edge, to be able to be put on a
Mm.
program such as that. They exist, they're far more prevalent today than they were 20 years ago, 18 years ago. So I was really fortunate to be in forward thinking organizations that really championed women and really identified talent irrespective of your background or where you had come from. They really did see talent, and they were able to identify that and put the right structure around that to support you to be successful. So I think I've been really fortunate in that I've had people that really did believe in me and see things in me that at times I probably didn't see myself. And that's been a source of, over the years, a source of comfort, a source of confidence. And I still have many of those mentors today. All these years later, that I will still pick up the phone to and have a chat to on days where I might be questioning myself or really facing a difficult challenge. So I feel very fortunate in that I've had that.
And Hope, you mentioned on the, letting the work do speak for itself. And
Yeah.
have you learned any lessons about either yourself, the dynamics of the industry, other people? Because that seems entirely logical. That you do good work, you get rewarded, and you progress accordingly. But as we both know, and as everyone watching knows, it's not always the case. Is that either not naivety, but it is in a way to think that actually, if I just get my head down and do well, I'll be rewarded, and everything will progress. Did you learn early on maybe that there was that refreshing naivety there, that maybe you didn't think the industry was as hard or as had challenges in it that maybe people that can't see from the outside?
Definitely. I think growing up, my dad and my mum really instilled in myself, and I'm one of four kids, that, work ethic is everything. And, my dad has a saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And so, growing up, work ethic was everything. And we were always, encouraged to work hard. And if you worked really hard, the fruits of that labor would come. And I think I did learn early on that that is not always the case. And so along the way, I had to become a lot more deliberate about my career. And I learned that whilst you will have mentors and people around you that will advocate for you and will support you and hope to see you to, be successful, ultimately no one can care more about your career than you. And what I learned was that the work is one thing and it will speak for itself to a point, but you have to be very deliberate about what you want to achieve in your career. And you have to be communicative of that to the people that can help you to get there. And so I think you have to do the work, you have to show up, you have to be someone that can execute, you have to be the safe pair of hands, but you also have to ensure that you are communicating what your career aspirations are and you are taking the steps to help you get there, and you are surrounding yourself with people that can advocate on your behalf when you may not have a seat at the table where those opportunities are being discussed. I don't think you can get there without doing the work. So I think work ethic is absolutely essential,
Correct. Yeah.
but don't think that the work in and of itself will be enough to help you get to where you need to get to. And that was a very hard lesson that I learned. And at times, I've been so disappointed in the outcomes of roles that I've been overlooked for, because I've really felt that I was deserving of those and they haven't gone my way. And I've had to reflect on why that may have been the case. And I think that has been what has helped to shape me. And I think I do a far better job of really being deliberate about what I want to achieve and what my next steps are.
It's a shame, really, isn't it? Because unfortunately, those politics of the industry and of certain businesses are still prevalent in areas. How is that, 18, 20 years on, you've been hardened to some of those experiences and a little bit more wise to how the dynamics are. How is that influencing your own leadership style approach? Because now you're leading men, you're leading women, sales organization, as you mentioned, in a relatively unique role, as you said. How is that changing how you show up today as a leader?
I really take seriously my role as a leader. Being a leader is the biggest privilege that I have outside of being a mother. I am responsible for my team, for their enjoyment of their work and their roles. I'm responsible for the fulfillment that they get from showing up at work each and every day, and that's never lost on me. I think that in my role today, I'm very, very um, focused on making sure that I provide and create an environment within Ingram Micro, particularly where we've got so much L&D support and a great DE&I program. My focus is on making sure that I provide a culture and an environment where the people in my team and those around me can do their best work. And I advocate for them at every opportunity, be it internally or externally, to help them to achieve their goals. Some people want the next step. Some people want to be, the CCE or the VP, or want to move into a role overseas. And other people just want to be recognised for the good work they do in their current role, and they're not looking for the next step. So I think understanding where my people are at and really meeting them where they're at, but being a conduit to help them be successful in their current roles or to help them find the next step for them is something that I really take seriously. And I really invest a lot of time in making sure that our TAP reviews, where we review talent, our individual development plans are in place, and leaning into a lot of the L&D and DE&I programs we have at Ingram to ensure that the teams can be successful. So I think I'm just very aware that the work doesn't always speak for itself. And as a leader, it's my role to elevate my team and to showcase what they deliver.
And how, as a leader today, and tomorrow, because I'm sure it's it's continually learning on the job or learning how to be a leader as you go. Are you What skills and inspiration do you get along the way? Are you learning just from your own experience in terms of, sadly what you mentioned there, that you found out the hard way that hard work doesn't always pay off. There's, the other elements of the industry. Have you picked up inspiration and style and approach just by what's happened to you, or as you referenced the mentors? How do you get your own learning?
I think along the way, you learn from both the good and the bad examples of leadership over the years. You probably learn more from the bad examples of leadership over the years.
Yeah.
And I think really observing what works for me and what doesn't has helped me to refine my own leadership style, but really motivated me to try to be the best leader that I can be, so that the people in my teams and those around me can thrive. What I would say over the years is that I think you do learn as you go. And I think you are constantly evolving as a leader. And I think that's critically important. I think the leader that I was even 18 months, 2 years, 3 years ago is probably very different to the leader I am today. You have to adapt, and you have to constantly reflect on yourself and what you need to do differently and better to be the best leader that you can be. But I think you definitely learn just as much from the bad examples than you do the good. And I think you have to be authentic as well. If you're not authentic, then I think people see that very quickly. And I think, it's hard to get people to come along for the ride if they don't think that you're being authentic. And so I think it's about definitely watching others, but being true to yourself and being very authentic in your leadership style. I was speaking to one of my team last week actually about this subject, and I was saying to him, I am very much the same version at home as I am at work. There are not two different versions of me. Of course, I'm probably a little more measured than I am at home or with friends, of course, but inherently to my core, I am the same person. And so I think authenticity in leadership is critical. So whilst observing others is important, I think don't ever try to be someone that you're not, because nobody wants to follow someone or come along for the ride with somebody that they don't believe is being authentic.
And you referenced, Hope, in terms of your own journey, the women in tech angle, of course, and that dimension.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, does it, just as a female leader in the industry who's rose up and everything you've just described, does it annoy you that that's even a topic of conversation now? I mean, obviously, I know there's a shining a spotlight and moving things forward, of course, but does it even annoy you that that is the topic still?
It annoys me, but I still think we need to have the conversation. So, yes, it annoys me that we're still talking about it, but I still think that we need to have the conversation. So, I think that, as an industry, we're still facing, significant challenges. There's been progress made, absolutely, but if you read many articles, many studies, many reports, I think the latest one I heard was that women still only make up around 29% of the workforce, the tech workforce in Australia, and that we are massively underrepresented in industry leadership roles. So the conversation is still very relevant based on some of those statistics and some of those reports that you read. So yes, I'm frustrated, but I still think it's a really important topic that we must continue to have.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, right? It's annoying, but you still have to have that conversation. We still have to talk about it and expose some of those challenges.
Yeah.
Hope you mentioned, your own entry into the industry and the experience, the troubles you had when you started out and some of those roles. Do you think they were down to and you mentioned it, your background, that, not in Sydney, not privately educated? Do you think it was your female? Do you think it's a combination of all? Is it hard to tell? Is there any specific examples or challenges that you've faced because of that?
Look, I think a lot of that came into play, but I also think a lot of it was about me. I really felt like I wasn't good enough to be there. And I think that,
So you might not have been
yeah,
specifically told it. It was could
yeah,
have been in your head or not.
absolutely. I think some of that narrative that we as women have, and maybe men have it too, I'm sure they do at times, I think we are constantly questioning whether or not we're good enough and whether we're worthy of the seat that we hold. And I think when I was younger, I think that was definitely more of the internal narrative that I had. And I think over time, and as I've had different successes along the way and validation along the way, not that I seek a lot of validation these days, but external validation, I think along the way, you start to build that muscle because you have success and you start to be invited to different rooms and different meetings, and people do start to ask your opinion and your perspective on things. So I think over time that gets less and less. But, I would be lying to say that even now there aren't days where I still question, was that the right decision? Did I show up in the right way? Those things. So I think sometimes as women, we can be a little bit of our own worst enemy, and we perceive that probably people are thinking about us more than they are. And so I think we've really got to be kinder to ourselves and kinder to one another, and really, believe in what we can contribute, and really back ourselves. And I think that is something we owe ourselves as much as, asking other people to give us that external validation and that support or those opportunities. If we don't believe in ourselves, we can't expect others to. And I think we need to constantly be challenging ourselves around that internal narrative or dialogue that we have, that maybe makes us feel like we don't deserve the seat at the table that we have, because we do. We wouldn't be there if we didn't.
And hope that my response to that is kind of the equivalent of asking how you solve world peace, because it's quite a big question and there's a lot of ways to slice and dice it. I don't think we'll be able to do it in this entire podcast, but based on that, what are some of the areas and changes, constructive changes, that can be made to better support women in tech? Is it, to your point there, is it in your head in some areas? Is it the industry factors as well? What can men do? I mean, there's so many ways you could attack this. Is there
Yep.
anything that stands out in terms of moving this along?
Absolutely. I think we have to work on ourselves, as I said, and I think we have to be bold and brave and confident in our abilities to know that we have valuable perspective and insight, and we deserve to hold the roles that we're in. And I think we have to support other women and champion other women. And I think as an industry, there's a couple of areas where I think there's still work to be done. I still think that there are gender biases. I think a lot of them can be unconscious biases. And I think that there are stereotypes that we encounter as women in the industry. And I think that we feel like potentially we need to be really technical. We need to have technical expertise to succeed, and that's an assumption that we make. That's not factual. I am not technical. I don't profess to be technical. I have amazing technical talent and people around me that I draw upon. And I think we feel at times if we're not technical, we can't succeed. If we don't possess certain attributes, then we're going to be overlooked for promotions or leadership roles. And I think these biases can create a less inclusive environment and make it harder for us to do our best work and for us to thrive. So I think being really aware of some of those biases and some of those stereotypes is something that we could do a better job at. I think the second area is a lack of representation and role modeling. I gave some quick stats, and there's plenty out there for people to read about the lack of female role models and the lack of female leaders in industry. And that can make you feel as a woman really, really isolated and make it really difficult for women and females in the industry to see the pathway for them and to envisage themselves in those more senior and advanced roles. And I think the lack of that representation and that role modeling means that potentially there's less networking opportunities for us, less mentorship opportunities, less sponsorship opportunities, and all of those things are really crucial for our career advancement. And I think the third thing for me, and I probably don't speak on this enough, actually, and I probably need to do a better job of this myself, linking back to representation and role modeling. I think that managing professional and personal responsibilities is really, really challenging for women in the industry. This industry runs very, very quickly, particularly being in distribution. It's exceptionally fast paced
The
and
quickest
very,
where you are.
yeah, it's extremely fast and it's very high pressure. And so it can be really challenging for women to manage both that personal and the personal and professional demands that we have. And I think that, women in this industry, as a result of those competing demands, sometimes really run the risk of burnout. So I think that we need to do a better job of supporting women to be able to successfully manage those competing priorities. People talk a lot about work life balance. And I shudder and I cringe when people talk about it. It's actually just another job that you add to our list of things we have to get good at. And it's another thing that makes us feel like we're failing against this unachievable expectation. So it's not about balance. I think balance is a myth. And I think it's a societal construct. I think that what we need as women in the industry is support from our families when we have to lean in harder at work to be able to take some of that, family load, be it, caring for an elderly parent, caring for children, whatever that looks like for you. We need our support system and our community to lean in for us when we have to lean in really heavily at work. And I think there are times where we have to lean in very, very hard at work. There could be a project, a deadline, end of quarter, end of year, and we have to lean in really, really hard at work in order to get to the outcome. And then likewise, when we've got family challenges, we need our organisations to provide that flexibility for us so that we can lean in at home when we need to. And so I think we need that flex both at home and at work and in our environments to be able to successfully balance those competing priorities without burning out.
And Hope, as a mother, as a leader, how was that? How is that for you?
It's challenging. I have three children. They are a little bit older these days. It was harder when they were younger, trying to balance some of those demands and childcare and all of those types of things was challenging. I think as they get older, that gets easier. At Ingram, I think our diversity and inclusion piece and the work that we do is phenomenal. We were just certified as a family friendly workplace, and I think some of those things, whilst people may feel like they tick a box, what they do is they send a message to women in our organisation that they are supported and that it is okay and that we understand that we have as women competing priorities. So I think for me, it will always be a challenge. Guilt is something that I think women carry very heavily. And I think I learned a long time ago that that is a wasted emotion and it doesn't change the outcome of anything other than make us feel bad and give us a few sleepless nights, and that we shouldn't carry guilt. We are all doing the best we can with the tools that we have and to juggle and to manage our competing priorities. And I think that's really helped me, accelerate and be at peace with the decisions that I make around work or home life.
Hope, I really appreciate the authenticity and the openness and the rawness in some areas here on tackling this because as you mentioned, you're a leader at the top of your game in the fastest part of the industry, but to share those challenges and individual elements that go into making the person is very important. And I think a lot of people get a lot out of what you've shared. Final point, Hope, and we ask this to everyone. We ask this to all of our guests. As a leader, as a human, how do you want to be viewed?
It's a really great question. And I think that how people talk about you when you're not there and how people speak about you when you're not in the room is a reflection on the type of leader that you are. So I hope that when I'm not in the room, that people say I have integrity and that I care and that I'm always available and make myself available no matter how busy I am, no matter what's going on, to help other people to be successful, whether that be mentorship, informal conversations, sitting on the floor with a member of my team and trying to help them overcome something. I hope that people reflect and say that I was always there to help and to help them be the best versions of themselves. But I think it's critically important that how you're spoken about when you're not there is a reflection of your leadership. And I just hope that people say I had integrity and that I was always willing to lend a hand and help people to be the best versions of themselves and to be successful in whatever it is they're looking to pursue.
Hope, thank you very much.
If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to leave a review. And to check out more episodes, visit the website. Thank you for tuning in to B2B Tech Talk.